Hello guys and welcome, this is Mr. Siege, and as expected we have another engineering commander that's going to land in the game in December. This is John Hunyadi. Welcome to Rise of Kingdoms. Again, a guy with a great tash, really nice armor, and I believe he is a Hungarian commander here, which we haven't seen before, I don't believe, which is kind of great. You know, spreading Rise of Kingdoms around the world. I think it's fantastic, really nice. So well done, Lilith, for that. So yeah, let's go in and, well, first of all, sorry it's been a bit late. Obviously, I wanted to try and get this out as soon as possible, but you know what? I had other things to do, work, and I may release another video later as well because I'm going to discuss more about commander pairings and stuff like that. That's likely anyway. But as we can see from John here, he is a support commander, and as we know, support works so well for engineering commanders. You get the march speed, which John actually doesn't have, which we'll have a look in a minute, and a great rage regeneration. So let's go take a look. Now, there is an issue with this first skill. Obviously, I've taken a look, I've had a bit of a read, and as we can see, it's called Raven's Wings. Rage cost 1000, pretty standard. Deals range direct damage to a target troop. Single target, obviously, it says single target here. Damage factor 900, but 1600 if the target is not within melee range. And that's something we're not really used to, dealing a higher damage to the target when they are at range, basically. But it's very contradictory in this part of the upgrade preview, because at range it's saying it does less damage, but at melee it does more damage, which is what we've seen in the past. It would be great if we did do more damage at range and then makes the commander a little bit weaker when they come to get swarmed, if they get swarmed, because obviously that works better for obviously troops on the field. In murder balls, they can come and swarm you, and you're going to be a lot less, doing a lot less damage, and they're going to swarm you pretty easily, to be fair. But for the next 3 seconds, also, this commander's troop deals 20% more range skill damage. Okay, so as we can see, he's a skill damage commander. Again, as expected, I did think they were going to introduce Smart this time, and we expect him to also work hand in hand with Stephen, which could be the case. But obviously, this is asking to be a primary commander by the looks of it, because for the next 3 seconds you're going to buff the active skill of the other commander in your troop, which is very interesting, because I would have liked to see Stephen with the skill tree as a primary commander, but then maybe we're going to be pairing Stephen then with Babur, and maybe this commander would work well with Margaret. I'm not quite sure yet. So let's have a bit of a look. Sword in the Sky. This commander siege unit is getting 30% attack. Okay, siege attack is very important. That's going to be doing the most damage, obviously, apart from all damage, really. That's going to be increasing your damage on the field, and as long as you're not taking any hits at melee range, that doesn't really matter. Your health and your defense doesn't matter as much. But also, while that troop is in range mode, which you're going to be, so you know what, I was kind of maybe expecting a rally or a garrison. Lilith could have made so much money on this commander. Putting him MGE as a rally garrison meta, oh my gosh, people would have had to spend thousands and thousands of gems, put loads of money into the game to get the siege, rally or garrison meta, but that's not the case. And you know, it doesn't matter to me. It would have been nice. We didn't necessarily need more ranged marches on the field, but I'm definitely not going to complain. You know, I will use this as a third march on the field, no problem at all. But they could have made a garrison rally that's, you know, could have been combined with field or rally meta. Anyway, he gains 15% faster rage, and that is huge. Engineering commanders are a bit slow generating range generally. They do have range buffs, obviously, on their talent tree, and sometimes in their expertise, like Babur. Yeah, they are slower than the melee troops because they're not receiving melee counterattack damage or basic attacks in return, which do generate rage also. So that's something to bear in mind. The Shield of Belgrade, obviously mentioned he's a Hungarian commander. Belgrade. So Belgrade is actually the capital of Serbia. Maybe that was part of Hungary in the past. I'm not really sure, because obviously he is a Hungarian commander, although I do believe he did die in Belgrade. So maybe it was on battle. I'm not 100% sure about that. Guys, do a bit of research if you want to. But whenever this commander's troop uses an active skill, it has a 20% chance to deal extra ranged direct damage to its current target, damage factor 300. Okay, great. Chance to trigger is increased to 40% if the target is not within melee range. So again, when you're at range, when you're firing at range, you've got a 40% chance to trigger. Now, on first looks, this is kind of meh. But to be honest with you, as we've seen with the new commander Stephen, every time you deal skill damage, there's a 20% chance of his expertise skill triggering. So this does give it an extra chance of triggering, which is quite nice. I am predicting his skill's going to trigger pretty much every 10 seconds because it's got a 10-second cooldown. But these engineering commanders tend to have small direct damage factors, which is going to be really handy. Again, though, I'm hugely disappointed that we do have small damage factors on engineering commanders, on the other hand, because the plume is basically still going to be way too weak compared to the ring. I'm saying way too weak. It's not terrible, but it's going to be weaker than the ring, and that sucks because really the plume should be a lot stronger. I'm talking about the immolating plume, the actual ranged accessory, which should be OP for range, but it's really not quite. Fourth skill, Knight of the Noon Bell. This commander's troop deals 40% more damage to troops with less than 50% units remaining. And honestly, this is an absolutely huge amount of damage bonus. This is all damage. So all your skill damage, all your smite damage, if you're pairing with a smite damage commander, which we will have to look at in when we're testing. Obviously, under 50% of units. Now, there's a good chance that's going to happen because when your troops in the murder ball around you are hitting units at the front of the other enemy's murder ball, you're going to be hitting those automatically because of the auto fire. So whenever those troops get to below 50%, you're going to be 40% more damage, and it's just absolutely massive, guys. So this is a massive skill to be reckoned with. Honestly, this could completely be broken, but without testing, I'm just not sure about these commanders yet, guys. So they're going to have 4 skill damage commanders in the game, and honestly, they all need to be trialed together because I love the support tree, and I also think the skill tree is just huge too. So it's just really hard to pin down which the best 2 skill damage pairings are going to be. And honestly, I'd mix and match the skill damage commanders. I'd probably leave Garrison and Cordoba as they are for now. But there is going to be other options. So if people have maxed Cordoba and only gone 5-5-1-1 on Margaret or Garja, now we may have better options in maxing maybe one of these commanders. Maybe Stephen could be the best one to max with Cordoba, or maybe it is just still Garja, which would make sense. So again, only going to know when it comes down to testing, because these skills are so complex and a lot of them have chances to trigger which just can completely change the way results happen. It's hard to know without actually doing the testing, but we will do the testing, so don't worry about that. As soon as possible, as soon as these commanders are in game, I'll be getting to 5-5-1-1, do some testing, even 5-5-5-1, do some more testing, and we'll be maxing as soon as possible and doing even more testing. So you guys have got the full picture of a low investment options and high investment options, going all in. So again, Glory Eternal, which is boosted skill, so it boosts the Shield of Belgrade. Whenever this commander troop uses an active skill, it has a 40% chance to deal extra range direct damage to its current target, damage factor 400, and gain 30 rage. So okay, a bit more rage as well, which is really nice. Chance to trigger is increased to 80% if target is not within melee range. So this is pretty much always going to trigger, to be honest with you. So when the active skills come along for this commander and the next commander, there's 2 lots of chances to do this damage factor. Okay, one is almost certainly is going to pop off and do the extra 400 and gain the rage. But you could also do this twice in the space of a couple of turns when both commanders' active skills go off. That's an extra straight 800 direct damage factor, and the 30 and then 60 rage as well if that pops off for both commanders, which is kind of massive, to be honest. And there's no cooldown on this, guys. There's no like 10-15 second cooldown, which it could have easily been. Now that hugely increases the amount of damage dealt to enemy troops. Now it's just a bit complicated, this, because we just really need to know what this active skill really is doing, whether it's 900 at range or whether it's 1600 at the range, because that makes such a huge difference. Now again, it really is looking like this is going to be a primary commander though, because of the next 3 seconds the commander troop deals 20% more skill damage. You're going to want that to hit on the active skill of the next commander. I don't think this won't really mean that this 20% more range skill damage is going to work for this, but this will work hand in hand with the expertise of this commander. So you'll get 20% more damage factor on this, and obviously Stephen's expertise as well. If we're going to have a look at Stephen, so his expertise, whenever their troop deals range skill damage, has a 20% chance to deal range direct damage up to 3 enemy troops. So yeah, the AoE there has more chance of triggering, and you're going to be increasing the damage on that by 20% as well, as long as that's within that 3 seconds. So these guys could absolutely just pop off together, and I think that's going to be the likely pairing, to be honest. Yeah, I really think you are going to pair these together, Stephen and John, and honestly, I just think they're going to absolutely pop off. Stephen's got the defense and the less range counter-attack damage, which is really nice. A lot of damage here from the active skill, very strong. Now, what is disappointing though is that we have no debuffs on these new 2 engineering commanders, and I really thought we would do. Now, we've had that in the last 2 cycles, and I think that makes range really strong, yet hugely less selfish. You're actually helping your melee troops out in front of you in the murder ball that's sitting there in front of you or around you, depending where you are in that position, and helping them out more by debuffing the enemy troops is just very, very strong. And they're a bit more appreciative of you, I think, as well, if you're doing that. I mean, some people are, some people aren't, of course. Some people are just never happy. But yeah, I'd have loved to see that, and I think that's just the only thing that's really missing on these commanders. Again, you've got some march speed there, but I would like to see this skill tree in Stephen as well, how that works. So we have to be a bit of chopping and changing which is going to be primary commander, checking out what works. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of testing to do, and I'm prepared to do that for you guys. Obviously, just keep an eye out for when they drop in game. Now, one thing I did want to add is that I'm very interested in John particularly for potential to rally and garrison. Obviously, I do siege rallies and garrisons. Garrison my own city, at least. I'm not saying defend flags and fortresses, but I've had a lot of luck in the past with using Baba and Cordoba, because Baba's skills, a lot of those actually don't trigger. It don't matter if you're in ranged mode or not. They actually work well in melee range. Now, the active skills of these commanders also work. But I've been through John's skills, and he could potentially be a great matchup for Baba instead of Cordoba in terms of rallying or garrisoning. Obviously, another thing to test out. And from what I'm looking at, all of this would work, because obviously skill damage ranged commanders do ranged skill damage. The active skills do actually work in melee range, okay? Yes, I'm talking out of tower mode. Now, this commander is also going to deal 20% more ranged skill damage for the next 3 seconds, and that is still going to boost Baba's active skill. Now, the commander siege unit is still going to gain 30% attack. However, they're not going to be in ranged mode, so they're not going to gain the rage 15% faster. And again, whether this commander troop uses an active skill, that's going to work. There's nothing to do with ranged in here, apart from you're only going to get the 20% chance to deal the extra ranged direct damage factor. Okay, now this full skill could be fantastic, especially if you're taking a city rally. Once that rally is down to 50%, because it is going to be eventually, you're going to be dealing 40% more damage, and that is going to wreck a rally. Also, the expertise, whenever this commander's troop uses an active skill, again, that's going to work. 40% chance to deal extra range direct damage to its current target. Okay, and it will gain 30 rage. Okay, that is going to work, but obviously it's not going to be the 80% that we'd have liked. It's going to be 40%, and obviously, yeah, that is just boosting the third skill here. Okay, it's just altering this skill as a bit of a boost, a little bit more of a more ranged damage factor, more probability, and you're getting the rage as well. So let me just jump in game a second. So as I was saying, Babur works really well too, because as I said, his active skill does work. Okay, that pops off. That's going to be increased. Okay, his active skill is going to increase. It's not halved at melee range either, but yeah, 20% skill damage on top of that range skill damage. Siege boost going to work. The ranged normal damage. Okay, I don't think the range normal damage actually works, but the range skill damage does for some reason, not sure why. Obviously they're going to take less normal damage. It's not even ranged normal damage, so they'll take less normal damage. Obviously here it says it takes less ranged normal damage too, which doesn't really matter. But whenever the troop launches a ranged basic attack, has a 10% chance to deal extra direct damage factor to the enemy. Now that shouldn't work, because if you are in melee range, not in melee range, but if you're in non-tower mode, then you are going to be just launching normal basic attacks. But the counter attack will work. Deals 10% more counter damage too, because that's normal counter attack. And obviously siege units gain 30% health. Whenever their troop takes damage, that's going to be working too. The siege units in their troop have a 10% chance to gain the following buffs. So these buffs also still work. And expertise, you gain 10% attack, and whenever you use an active skill, gains 50 extra rage per second for the next 3 seconds. So Babur works fantastic as a rally and garrison, and I've tested it myself, but with Cordoba. Now the trouble is Cordoba has too many range specific skills. Again, when in range mode, commander deals 10% more range smite damage. That doesn't actually work. Okay, bonuses to range smite damage do work, but bonuses to range normal damage don't work out of tower mode. That works actually as well, but the range counter attack doesn't work. Whenever that troop is hit with a basic attack, yeah, that's going to work too. It has a 10% chance to gain 40%. Well, yeah, it gets hit with a basic attack, but you're not doing the ranged normal damage. Now that would be absolutely huge, but again, that's not actually going to work. The ranged normal damage bonuses don't pop off. Now, and again with the expertise, that doesn't work either, because you're dealing more ranged normal damage and you're not going to be in ranged mode. But yeah, for the ranged skill damage, it does actually work. And as I said, the ranged smite damage also does work. But again, I'm not 100% on that. It's just so hard to work out what works and what doesn't. Now, also the good thing is, if you are rallying something like Gorgo, now she has a skill damage mitigation, so that she takes 20% less skill damage, which is massive, and also deals 5% less skill damage. Well, she's not going to take less skill damage because we do ranged skill damage, okay? So skill damage here includes direct damage, additional damage, does not include ranged direct damage or ranged additional damage. So that 20% less skill damage isn't going to take any effect. She's still going to be taking the full range skill damage, even if she's in a garrison. And she's going to be dealing less skill damage, so it's going to hurt her even more, because she's not going to be able to deal it as much back either. Now, I've noticed this as well with Constantine. On his 4th skill, he can take 40% less skill damage. Well, again, it's going to have no effect from ranged marches because they don't deal skill damage. Now, it is a little bit different in the talent trees, because when, like here, this commander's troop takes 6% less skill damage of all types. Okay, so that does have an effect on ranged commanders because it's of all types. It's not just skill damage, okay? So that's why these trees can work for ranged commanders and normal melee commanders. So guys, I hope that's been useful. Obviously, trying to explain a little bit. It's still so hard for me to understand a lot of this as well. Very complicated. I try and rely on Phil for some of this stuff, and I just thought I'd try and let you know a bit of an insight in the differences between ranged skill and normal skill damage. It is a different thing, and some of these things work and some of them don't. So guys, I will see you on the next one. This is me, Mr. Siege. Obviously super happy we're going to get a 3rd march. I'll get 3 marches out in the field next time, which is amazing, of course, and I will catch you on the next one, guys. So bye bye.